So I just want to, we talked about studying this at a molecular level. Yeah. So I want to go back, just like the lactic acid and the failing muscle. I want to go back to try to study this at a molecular level. And say we're looking at what percentage of the firm the manager owns, and we'll call that insider ownership, and the performance. Well, it turns out, we don't know this, but if we did, right, let's say this is true, that each firm has their own, frontier of performance managerial ownership. For firm A, there's an optimum at 3%. For firm C, there's an optimal ownership of 5%. And for firm B, there's an optional optimal ownership at 7%. Right? There's really no pattern, right? You need to know what the frontier is for each firm. There's no, if you're really doing this right, you fit just a horizontal line. There's no cross-sectional relationship here. You need to know the trade-off for each firm. So you can see here how the optimum 3% for A, 5% for C, and 7% for B. That's the equilibrium for each firm. So, but what about if the Senate, the government got interested in it, and it required a study to examine the ownership performance relationship? And some guys from the University of Chicago come along and they fitted a curve to this data. It's increasing up to 5%, then decreasing in performance. And this is probably what you get if you fit this. And what say that the Senate took it really seriously, right? And they concluded that 5% was the optimum. Yeah. And they passed a law saying the management must have 5% ownership. What would be the effect of that? Well, at 5% ownership, A and B are no longer at an optimum, right? You can see that A, rather than being at the optimum of 3, at 5% is way down here on the curve. And for B, rather than being at the optimum of 7, they're way down here at 5. So you can see the decrease in performance for both A and for B. So a very serious thing. However, there is no relationship here cross-sectionally. However, so if you were to do, if the people from Chicago had used system GMM, they would have found no relationship. They would have found this horizontal line, and the Senate wouldn't have concluded that all firms have to have 5%, right? Because if you've got an endogeneity problem, then you really do have a trade-off for each of the firms, and what you're going to find is no relationship. There's no relationship. So the really, really good references here, these articles by Dempsey, right, and Journal Law and Economics and Journal Political Economics. And there's a really good paper by Coles, Lemon, and Meskey in the Journal of Financial Economics. But what they did was they sort of studied the managerial pay performance issue at the molecular level. They looked at the productivity parameters for managerial input and investment that would give rise to the observed level of ownership and investment. That is, they just used a simple Cobb-Douglas production function. And so they looked at the Cobb-Douglas parameters for labor and capital that would give rise to the observed level of ownership and investment. So they got very, very sensible results, right? That the productivity of managerial input, that is labor, was high in personal and business services and in education, software, networking, computers. That the productivity of labor was low in metal, mining, and utilities. And they got model values of Q, total Q, that were highly correlated with observed Q. So that's really worth looking at, this paper by